Do you ever wonder what magic is happening behind the counter at a game store? Like, how do these people, how do they know everything? Like, I watch people walk in and the person behind the counter knows everything about every video game ever. How? What's going on that computer behind the desk? How do they do that? So I've never gotten the chance to do that, and I'm kind of jealous. So I built the thing, and I wanted it to look like what I imagine is going on behind the screen, behind that counter. So I used this amazing win98.css live. I've always wanted to use it, so I finally got to use it. Here it is. I tried first to just build this with a large language model, and it does a pretty good job. I mean, it's trained on the internet, but video games are so specific. And if you're behind the counter, you have to get it right. And that's what always really impresses me about the person. So like somebody could walk up to this, right? And they could say, what game do you play as an unlikely hero? That's almost all of them, where you guide enslaved Moo Dawkins. Now, if you know what that is, you're very happy. But that's a hard word. Through a portal to escape Rupture Farms. Now, it's a lot of that. Now, if you know what that is, it's one of my favorite games. But if you don't know, what would you do? The power of large language models shows off that we can just ask questions like this, and it will try to answer. So remember, trained on the internet. So he's kind of all over the place here. This has the answer in it, but it's also all over the place, right? And it's not right. And this would really make somebody mad. So the answer is this Oddworld, right? It's Oddworld. It's one of the best games out there. I'll link to it in the notes, I guess. I guess that's what you do. And so, but he says you're talking about Flood or Super Lucky's Tale. No, wait, that's not it. The one that comes to mind is actually Oddworld's Stranger's Wrath, which is great. That's not it. That's kind of what I was thinking about. Munch's Odyssey, that's also a good one. Meme Run, he's all over the place, right? We want it to be specific. So it kind of failed, right? It kind of worked, but it failed. So I said, what if we got a little bit more specific? So I tried to introduce RAG to the problem space. Now, if you haven't heard of RAG yet, it's Retrieval Augmented Generation. I'm going to allow my chatbot to retrieve additional context. I did some looking around and I found this IGDB. So it's like IMDB, but Internet Game Database. And it's amazing. Built by Twitch. It has an API, and get this, almost 300,000 games, complete with descriptions and lore. And it's pretty perfect for what I want, and they let you cache it. In fact, they want you to cache it. So I decided to use a vector database, and we have one here at Cloudflare. It's called Vectorize. And a vector database is pretty great for this use case specifically. It helps you find likely relevant documents. So what I did was I batched up my requests and I created embeddings for each one of the entries, and I stored those in a vector database. I'll create another video about how I did that in the future. But lucky for me, I was able to use the V2 version of Vectorize, which at the recording of this video just went into public beta. And check this out. I think I got like 700,000 entries. Let's see. So I'm going to run this Wrangler Vectorize info on my video game summaries database. Yeah, 700,798. So awesome. So if I go back and I come in here and I paste that thing, I'm now going to choose to use Vectorize, which will make use of my vector data. So I'm going to click send here, and we should see it gets better. Yep, so he played a joke on us here. He's saying Abe's Exodus, Abe's Odyssey. He's playing, waiting for the hero to say the Medocus supporter. So one of the things that you can also do is I can say, what is your source? And I asked him to return the source every time, but sometimes these things don't follow. So I can say, what is your source? And what's really powerful here is it's gonna show this, and here is the link to that IMDb game, right? So we've got a link to the game from the source. Come here, open that up. That is what Abe looks like. He is a Mudakin. You should play this game. So let's take a look at the code. So I pushed up this repo so that you can follow along. It's attached to the video. So it's a Hono app, it's a workers app. It's a Hono app. And the system message that we're going to send it here first is, you are an assistant for an employee at a video game store. Your job is to assist the employee in answering the user's questions to your best ability. You should help them look like they know everything about every video game, which again is what I'm trying to do, right? I'm trying to create that person. Always let the user know if you are unsure to their question by replying, dude, I'm not sure, which is what happens, right? In the case that we passed in that we wanted to use Vectorize, what we're going to do is we're going to generate a standalone question. I want a summary of what the user's asking for based on all the interactions up until now. Like maybe they asked a question and then we responded and then they asked more, but they won't repeat what they said. So I can't just take the last thing that they said, right? They could have just said yes or no. So what we need to do is we need to make sure that we summarize the entire conversation. So what we do is we generate a standalone question. So the prompt here, create a standalone question based on the following conversation of convo, which is built here. I looped through all of the messages that were passed up. And then I ran that against Llama 3.1 AP instruct. This is how you do the run that sort of model on Workers AI. I pull out the standalone question, and then I need to do a thing. I need to embed it, right? So previously, when I indexed all of these things, I created embeddings using this model, using this BGE large. I created embeddings for all of the information. I did this for each piece of content that I wanted. And again, I'll show you that later. In a different video. So what's nice here is now that I have this embedding results, I can use this Vectorize, right? And it's really simple. Vectorize is just there. It's in my Wrangler. I defined in my Wrangler. Let's take a look at that. I defined in my Wrangler here Vectorize. I just uncommented it. So I Vectorize and video game summaries, and I followed the instructions on how to build that, and I loaded it up. But here it is. I'm using that index, and I can use that across multiple projects, and I probably will. And we'll come back here, and you'll see that I do this query. So it does similarity. It says, how similar are these two? So it's going to look at the standalone question to all of the entries there. And then I get back these matches, right? So these matches, I'm going to filter those out. I found that everything that's over 0.4 is probably likely that it could be right. So I kind of want to include that in the context. So I use the return vectors and their metadata to create more context. So this metadata, right? So I have the name of the game. I have this text. That is what I stored when I did that. So I chose to store the text that I scraped in metadata. I didn't need to do that, but now what I don't need to do is I don't need to go hit IGDB again. I don't need to hit that API. I also stored the ID so that I could hit the API if I wanted to, but for now, I just want the text that semantically matches. And now I add that context specifically to the system message. So I said, you should also use the following content in determining your answer. And I just put this, I made this up. This isn't real, this context. And I put the retrieved context in there. And again, it looks like this. It's got the name and then the text and then the source and the URL. And I said, make sure to include a link to the source. It didn't, but sometimes it does. But if you ask for the source, it was able to retrieve the source right from that. So this type of solution is great for what we were trying to do. Anytime there's like a customer service help and you want to load docs, it's a great solution to use your data. You want to make use of the security, right? We're very secure. We didn't have to train anything. We have our own private database, and it's being loaded into the context of whatever AI application I load. So they have more context. What other ideas do you have where you could use a similar situation to this? Keep me posted on your journey. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you real soon. Look at this store. There's so much stuff in here.